Welcome to Growth with Portia, a weekly conversation for your personal and professional growth. Here is your host, Portia Booker.
Hey listeners, welcome to Growth with Portia. I'm your host, Portia Booker, and yes, this is my real name. So, question for you. Did you bring your curious mind today? If so, I don't want to keep you waiting. Let's dive in. This conversation is number 3 in the part 3 series of honoring my beloved mother, Sharonne Lopez, who made her transition from Earth on July 7th, 2022. So today I am joined by a returning guest who is on a mission to help others be the change they wish to see in the world. She is the founder of the Desire to Inspire Foundation and host of the Soulful Conversations podcast. So welcome back to Groove Portia, my coach and soul mother, Miss Dawn Earhart Woody. How are you doing today, Mama Dawn?
I'm always happy when I get to spend time with you. Thank you so much for having me today.
Well, it's always, to me, one of those conversations where every single time we talk, I feel like we can turn into a podcast, literally. I think we've had this discussion before. And so, Dawn, I always love to start off my conversations with gratitude. What are you grateful for today?
I am grateful for you. I am grateful to have you in my life. Before I thought I should bring tissues because I know this is going to be one of those episodes.
I can definitely say the feeling is mutual because through this transitional journey that I've been on, I mean, you had the opportunity to meet my mother and, interact with her on short periods of time, but you really got to see the level of inspiration, love, and positivity that radiated from my mother, and hence where I get it from. The apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. And so I can say for me today, Dawn, I'm definitely grateful, obviously, for you really taking me under your wing and just being here and a part of my community. Because, when you're going through grief, let's be honest, it can be a roller coaster of emotions and it's not linear, right? Some days we're on a smooth, steady plane, while other days it feels like we're going through the Rocky Mountains on a comfort bike. So, truthfully, when you're in these bouts, at least for me through this journey, what I found that really brings me comfort and I'm forever grateful for is that support. And Dawn, I really want to talk about that today. We've all experienced grief at some point in our life. I mean, me and you talked about, the journey for you after your father transitioned. And I know that you and your father were very close. And so, Dawn, what did it take for you to stay in a space of gratitude during your grief journey?
I think I've always clung to gratitude. It's something that's always been very natural to me because I understand that there are other people in the world that aren't as blessed as I am. And I've talked about this in some of our other podcasts when we've talked about my father's passing. He died of a heart attack the day after Father's Day. And, unexpected. I was supposed to go visit the following week. And as I was packing for his funeral, I was so sad. I was so shocked. I was in all of the emotions all at once. And I just remember thinking, oh gosh, I have to pack for my father's funeral. But the next thought that came to my head is, Dawn, at least you got to have a dad. You had a wonderful dad. And, your dad got to meet your children. Because it was the day after Father's Day, I got to speak to my dad the day before. And the last words I got to say to my dad were, I love you, Dad. So I looked at everything I had to be grateful for in that situation. It didn't take away the situation, but at least I was able to see that there were some blessings in there for me.
And see, Dawn, what does it take for us to be thankful for those little miracles, right? Because me and you have talked about, even with my mom's own transition, I was grateful, and I might get emotional. I was grateful to have been able to tell my mom, thank you. Thank you for the life that she gave me. Thank you for being my cheerleader, to cheer me on when I couldn't cheer for myself. Thank you for encouraging me to go for my dreams, my goals when the whole world was laughing at me. And also, I didn't want to call anybody else mommy but her. And for me, knowing that I have that forever in my heart, and of course I recorded it, we talked about that too. Not everybody has those moments or is able to think about those times in grief. And so, Dawn, for our listeners who are tuning in, what did it take for you to really find that thankfulness in those moments, especially for you being able to speak to your dad the day before he transitioned and giving him that love of your true heart instead of being, oh, I wish I could have seen him, like you say, you were supposed to go the week later to see him in person. But what gives you that level of thankfulness and comfort to be able to cherish those memories?
Because I know not everybody has those things. Not everybody has that closure. Not everybody got to have their last word to their loved one is something beautiful and of love. And my dad's transition really helped me realize how precious and fragile life is. It is a gift. We don't know when our last day is going to be. You don't have to get a diagnosis of a terminal illness to understand that life could be taken at any moment. There recently in the city that I live in, a mother went out for a jog. She got hit by a car. She was airlifted to hospital. She passed away. I know that as she was like leaving that morning to go out for her run, she didn't think she was never coming home. So, I look at, the gratitude in my dad's passing is for me, not to be afraid of doing things and living my life, not letting fear keep me from doing that, and also being very conscious of how I speak to the people I love.
Dawn, I love what you mentioned just now about fear, because we kind of touched on that before, me and you, when we've talked, is I found myself in that state of fear where I'm like, oh, great. Now my cheerleader's gone. I don't know what direction to go. Should I continue to pursue my passion? Should I go this direction in the corporate space? And so, Dawn, for our listeners who are tuning in, what can they do to try to pivot from that space of being fearful of living when someone or a door closes that, causes grief, such as the loss of a job?
I read a book several years ago. It was Hospice Nurse who wrote about the 10 common things that people say when they are on their deathbed. And it's always about the things they didn't get to do. And I don't want to reach the end of my days and look back and say, oh, I wish I would have done this. So I have to take fear out of the picture. I used to be afraid of flying over oceans. I told you that before. And, so I would have never gone to Africa. I wouldn't go to the islands. I wouldn't go to all these amazing places that I wanted to go to, but I was afraid. And then when Dad died mowing the lawn, he was mowing the lawn. I just thought, again, you could be doing the most mundane thing and, meet the end of your days. So why am I letting fear keep me from living?
Oh, 100%, Dawn. And that's kind of the same way I felt with my mom transitioning. Like, it was that moment of, okay, Portia, mom has reached her new assignment. I don't like to say she passed away. I'm really particular about words and intention. Mom has reached her new assignment. So now what are you going to do? The baton is in your hand to take it and either hold it or take it and run with it. And so, Dawn, that kind of segues into kind of what I really wanted to focus on today. Today is the launch of my audiobook, Finding Grace Within Grief, Her Transition, My Transformation. And I can truly say that my audiobook was that taking the leap of stepping into an arena that I had always wanted to be in. I've always wanted to be an author. But of course, like what we mentioned before, we tend to put everything that we want to go for on the back burner, right? That fear, that inner critic. And then sometimes grief is kind of that extra gas that we need per se to really embark on or take off into the space that we need to. And so, Dawn, for our listeners who are tuning in, you had the opportunity to actually be a part of this audio book that I created. Can you shed some light with our listeners about your experience from, listening to this and also giving some insight?
Well, as you said, I'm your soul mom. You're my soul daughter. And my daughters are a little bit older than you, just by a few years. And so I love being able to be there for you and be part of this process, watching you turn your grief into something that is beneficial and helpful to others while you're healing your own heart in the process. But, I can say as a mom, I know that your mom loved you, and I know that she would want you to keep shining, keep going for your dreams. I think she would be so sad to know that this broke you, but she raised a strong girl. So like watching this process happen it's been wonderful to me. I mean, I just lost my dogs over the last couple of months too. So we've both been having our own grief and loss at the same time. So sometimes we're both crying at the same time, but it's been an honor to be on this journey with you, and the way the strength you have, and again the way you're taking your pain and turning it into something that can help others. I think that's the best thing we can do with our pain.
And Dawn, it took me a little bit of time to be able to see the miracle within the mess, right? Because that's the thing that I've noticed with grief is when we're stuck in that boat of grief. I described it as when an athlete who's trained for months, for years, for this big, gigantic tournament race, whatever, they reach very, very closely to the finish line. They fracture their knee, then they lose. And, that grief settles in of, oh, great. I've worked so hard to get here. Now I'm stuck. Now I have to pivot. And that was the same case with me, where I had to either stay a prisoner of my emotions or learn to break free from the societal shackles that are often placed on grief. And for me, I can say for our listeners who are tuning in, writing this book, I didn't think that it was going to be possible. I didn't envision this at all. I knew I wanted to become an author, but I didn't realize that this was going to be my segue into becoming an author. Really shedding so many layers for myself and freeing myself from so many expectations that I placed on myself, and that also I think my mom placed on me too. I was able to shed those and acquire a new armor, which I call authenticity.
Just be yourself.
And who did I learn that from?
Dr. Seuss.
And it, Dawn, I can say that it's definitely been freeing. It's been very emotionally charged, as we both know. I mean, we both had our bouts of grief. I mean, you losing both of the fur kids, me with my mom, and, literally letting go of our identity and association with all of these things. It can be sometimes too much, but I can say I'm grateful. I'm forever grateful that I was able to convert those painful moments, those sleepless nights. I mean, I told you, people ask me all the time, Portia, when I see your Instagram story says 3:33 a.m. in your gratitude journal, are you really up? Yes, I am up. Portia is up, because that's just me. I can't just lay idly in the bed like scrolling social media. No, I'm just going to get up. I'm grateful that I woke up, right? It goes back to what we talked about, Dawn, about pivoting. And so being able to see the greatness within that 3 a.m. time and being able to utilize it instead of it using me. But that's for a whole nother day. We're going to take a quick break right here on Group Portia. Everybody stick with us. We will be right back. Everybody, welcome back right here on Group Portia. I'm Joel remotely with, of course, my coach and soul mom, Miss Dawn Earhart Whitty, and we were just having a great conversation, of course, about gratitude and my audiobook, which just came out today. So, Dawn, I want to ask you this. One thing that, of course, being your soul kid, that I love about your mission, and the thing that we've talked about a lot, is be the change that you wish to see in the world. And so, Dawn, for our listeners who are tuning in, how can they apply this same mission while they're on a grief journey?
I think, as we talked about before, gratitude is the cornerstone. Gratitude is the foundation of everything. When you come from a place of gratitude, then you can continue, being the light that you are in the world. I just sent you something this morning, and I feel like this is so perfect. And it said, note to self, what is my purpose in life? I asked the void. What if I told you that you fulfilled it when you took an extra hour to talk to that kid about his life, said the voice, or when you paid for that young couple in the restaurant, or when you saved that dog in the traffic, or when you tied your father's shoes for him. Your problem is that you equate your purpose with goal-based achievement. The universe isn't interested in your achievements, just your heart. When you choose to act out of the kindness, compassion, and love, you are already aligned with your purpose. And that is how we can be the change, whether we're going through grief in the good times and in the not so good times. If we can, again, be a light to others, help lift another, that always gives me so much happiness and fulfillment that it makes the grief go away. And I truly do believe that our lives are eternal. I know, a few months ago, my dad passed away in 2000. I had one dream about him about a month after he passed, and none since, up until I think back in February. And when I woke up, I was crying because I felt like I had just hugged my dad. I really felt like I just hugged my dad. So I do believe we are still connected to our loved ones even after they're gone. So that also helps me in continuing to look at the bright side, because I know that they still exist.
Ooh, Dawn, I can definitely relate to you there. I know, even though it hasn't been as long of a time like you with your father, it's only been, as of today, 3 months since my mom transitioned. And the first time that my mom came to me was the very night that we signed all the paperwork for her to be cremated. And I just remember I felt so broken. I felt empty. I felt shattered. I just was confused. I didn't understand. And I just remember in my head, I'm like, Mommy, give me a hug. Mommy, I need you. And I remember, Dawn, I think I talked to you about this the very next day, that my mom came in my room and slept in my bed with me. And the only reason why I knew that is because I never sweat in my sleep. I never do. Most of the time, I'm a freeze baby. I mean, I'm born in November. So, I'm born in the polar ice cap cold, especially here in Ohio. So, we get those winters that are where you have to layer up with bear skin, mink coat, all the things, literally. So I never really sweat in my sleep, and I have the coldest room in the house. And so the fact that I was sweating in my sleep, I'm like, okay, somebody was holding me. And it's not the dog, because Mr. Fletcher has his own room. You know how that goes. But it goes back to what you said, like just being able to feel that when you ask them to come see you, when you ask for a sign from them. And I didn't believe that stuff was real, Dawn. I really didn't until my therapist, who's the bomb.com, literally told me, this is what you need to do, and things will start working. The miracles will start happening. And I didn't believe it. But once I sought it, I sought out for a message, then it was very apparent to me, whether it's through somebody else. I mean, remember when we did our balloon release for my mom, the complete stranger who took pictures for us at Edgewater, I didn't expect that. And the fact that she knew, she asked me, hey, is this by any chance your mom? Who would have known? I mean, the fact that she knew that right off the bat still brings me comfort to this day, that I knew that my mom was watching out for us. And it was supposed to rain all that day. And then the sun comes out when we released the balloons over the lake. I mean, when you seek them, they're there. And I think sometimes, Dawn, we want a more concrete answer. We seek a more concrete message from our loved ones when they've, transitioned. And I know for me, because I was so close with my mom, I think that's another reason why I feel that more connection. And so, Dawn, for our listeners who are tuning in who may have not had that same level of closeness like me and you have had with our loved ones, what tips can you leave with them if they're really feeling that void, that emptiness, and they just need a message or word of comfort?
Well, ask, that's the first thing. Talk to them like they're still here, write to them, talk to them. And the other thing, that if you have any guilt, if there's something left in you because something was left unsaid, or something was said that you wished you wouldn't have said or happened, forgive yourself. Because when you have guilt within you, you're going to miss the signs. You're not going to receive them. So you have to forgive yourself for anything that did happen, and just and believe. You have to have the faith, because once you believe, you will start seeing the magic and the miracles all the time. And I used to be skeptical too, until things started happening in my life that I'm like, oh gosh, I can't question that anymore. That was too obvious. Thank you. So now that has cemented my faith because of the experiences that I've had.
Dawn, I love what you brought up just now about guilt, because I know I wrestled with that for a minute, after my mom had transitioned. I'm like, man, I should have done this, I should have done that. And I know a lot of people, they wrestle with that guilt trip of all the things that they wish they could have, should have done. And Dawn, what did it take for you to not fall into that boat of guilt, especially when you were supposed to go see your dad literally a week later, and obviously the day after Father's Day he transitions? What kept you out of that boat of guilt and keeps you still in a state of gratitude, even when you find, for example, I know for me, triggers when you find other people who have been in your same boat of losing a parent, and it kind of touches you emotionally?
Again, the gratitude. I always go to the gratitude, because that's the way I get through life about everything. I'm grateful that I had them. I'm grateful. When Whitney and Lola passed, both of them happened very suddenly. One night they were okay. The next day, within a couple hours, they were gone. And at first I was like, oh God, should I have taken them to the vet sooner? Should I have done this? All the things that I should have done. And I think we have to stop with the should have, could have, would have's, because we can't go back and change time. We can only move forward, and then being grateful that it happened the way it happened. I look at Whitney and Lola and I think, what, they didn't have to go in and out of the vet for weeks and all these surgeries and things. It happened quickly. It happened peacefully. The day Whitney passed, my daughter happened to be here that day, and she doesn't usually come on a Tuesday, but she happened to be here that day. And so I looked at the blessings and how it all went down, and just said, this is the way it was supposed to happen. This was their journey. They knew I loved them their whole entire lives. And, I was very grateful for having them. So I look at everything as this was the way it was supposed to be. Nothing I could have done would have changed it.
Dawn, I love what you just brought up just now about how things transpire, because I know for me, I wrestled with that for a period of time, especially when I see people. For example, my mom had a chronic lung condition. When I encounter other people who are either on supplemental oxygen, they have like an Inogen, or I'll see things on Facebook where someone got a lung transplant, or they were able to catch the lung cancer early and maybe take, a percentage of their lung, and the person's fine, okay, hunky dory. And I know for me, that was an area that I struggled with heavily. The should I've done this? Could I have taken her to another doctor to have her looked at for a second time or a second opinion? But I agree with you, Dawn, that I'm grateful for the way things transpire. And I can say that with a clean slate and honesty today, because originally I was not okay with that, because I thought about all the things that in my mind should have played out. But let's be honest, as me and you both know, there are things that are out of our control. You know, this was my mom's journey, and, you know, I'm holding her hand, supporting her through that. And I'm grateful that I was able to hold my mom's hand when she took her last breath. I'm grateful that she transitioned peacefully as though she was sleeping, because that's literally actually what I prayed for. I asked God, I said, God, if it's my mom's time to go, then I surrender her to you. But I have one ask. Again, it goes back to asking. I have one ask, God. Let her go peacefully. Don't make it violent. Just make it peaceful as though she is going to sleep. And that's exactly what happened. Through the whole day that my mom transitioned, that's the one thing that I find gratitude in, is that she went the way that I asked God, and he kept his promise to me. And I know a lot of people may not find that easy, but that's what gives me comfort every day.
I love what you said. You surrendered her to God. And I think that that's what we also have to realize, that each of us are on our own journeys. As a mom, I don't want anything terrible to happen to my children. I want them to be safe. I want them to be happy. But I also understand that with life comes challenges, and those are the things that we learn and we grow from. So I surrendered them to their own path and to God. And I love them and support them unconditionally. But I have to understand, this is their journey. This was her journey. That was my dad's journey. Each of our journeys is our own.
Oh, 100%. And that I had to learn to let go of that concept in my mind that I have control over all of these things, all of these outliers, all of these parts and moving pieces. I have control over, keeping her alive, when really, truthfully, it was her journey. It was her time. Her assignment, again, her assignment here on earth was done. So now she is graduating to her next endeavor in life, to impact other people in the way that she, did for me as her daughter, my brother, and the rest of our family, and everybody else who she made an impact on. And so I'm forever grateful, that I was able to be with her, to send her off. It, for most of us, those moments are not easy, but I can say that because my mother was so transparent with me and my brother from when I was a teenager about life and death, I think that's why when liftoff came, it was a little easier, because we already knew, okay, this is what mom wants. This is what we're going to follow through with. And there was no emotional turmoil with the decision, because the foundation had already been laid out for the last 15 years. So we're going to take another quick break right here on Good Portia. Everybody stick with us. We will be right back. Everybody, welcome back right here on Good Portia. I'm joined remotely with, of course, my coach and soul mother, Miss Dawn Earhart Whitty. We're just having a great conversation, of course, continued around grief, transition, and also learning to cope. And so, Dawn, for our listeners who are tuning in, if they are interested in connecting with you and learning more about you, is there a website or social media handle you can share with us today?
They can find me directly at Dawn Earhart Whitty. I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn. My foundation, the Desire to Inspire Foundation, is at www.desirettoinspirefoundation.org. And my shopping site is the beelineproducts.com, and it's belineproducts.com. And we have a bunch of inspirational merchandise, t-shirts, sweatshirts, all kinds of things, just to be reminders of, who we want to be in the world.
Yes, again, be the change that you wish to see in the world. Dawn, for our listeners who are tuning in, I know that this was an area that I struggled with when my mom transitioned. I struggled with asking for support. I struggled with asking for help. And so, for our listeners, Dawn, who are tuning in, what advice can you give to family members and friends of someone who is grieving on ways to support them?
I think just show up. Showing up is the best thing you can do. You don't have to give advice. Just let them know that you care, and that when they're ready to talk or they need to talk, that you are there for them. I think that is the best thing we can do for anybody, whether they're going through grief or just in their celebrations too. Show up for people and just know that you love them unconditionally and you're here to support them however they need it.
And Dawn, can you elaborate too on things that when you were going through your grief, the transition of the pups and of your father that were kind of a little, I wish that I wouldn't have heard that. Like, I know for me, what tended to get me a lot was when people are like, oh, your mom's in a better place. Ugh, that wasn't something that really sat well with me at the time, because I'm like, well, if she was in a better place, she'd still be here with me. Or I know some people become very religious. They want to, and nothing against anything in the Bible, but I know certain biblical quotes do not provide comfort for me. They, are more so to me emotionally detached, to say in a nice way. They just don't resonate with words of comfort that I would want to hear. And so, Dawn, can you maybe elaborate on that from your experience?
I remember before I lost my dad, I remember like when anybody would lose somebody around me, I didn't know what to say. I would just not say anything because I'm like, I don't want to make them sad. Like, I don't want to say something to make them sad. But I didn't realize until I went through it myself that they're going to be sad no matter what I say. So, offering those, while well-intentioned, again, just showing up and just saying, I'm here for you. I'm so sorry. Crying together. Those are the things, those words that are meant to be encouraging. Sometimes you're just not ready to hear that yet. And for the people that are going through it, feel your feelings, cry when you feel it crying. It's okay. You need to do that because it will come out in some other way, whether it is something internally, or you're going to not be the person that you want to be in the world. So feel the feelings, find your people that you can go to. And on the other side, be that person you wish you had while you were going through this.
Dawn, I love what you reinforced just now about feeling your feelings and crying, because I know that was an area I struggled with for a minute. And I know that a lot of people do, right? When you are the quote unquote strong one in the family, it's that expectation that we not only place on ourselves, but I think our families place that on us too, to have to show up a certain way every single time. You're not allowed to be vulnerable. And we have to give ourselves permission to be vulnerable, because I've found that that's where my greatest strength has been, is to give myself permission to cry in front of people, because I don't want people to think that I'm infallible. I don't want people to be under this impression that I didn't miss my mom. I think, Dawn, you'd probably be more concerned with me if I didn't cry versus if I have been crying for a couple of days. And I'm glad that I was able to work through that barrier, because I've said it before, growing up with all boys, it was that expectation that I could not show emotion if I got hurt. It was, oh, you got to suck it up. Oh, you got to keep going. No, just dust yourself off and try again. But we're human. Crying is a part of our makeup. And I can say it's been freeing to give myself permission to do that, because it's a release. It's a healthy release.
Well, I showed you that video yesterday, this beautiful video of this man who raised a silverback gorilla, and he went to go see him like many, many years after he was released into the wild. And this gorilla had attacked other humans, so they were worried that he might attack him. And when they saw each other, the silverback gorilla came out, he was hugging him, he wouldn't let him go. And I was sobbing by the end of it. And it's not because I was sad, I was moved. I think love moves our soul. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's like a tear like that, but it felt exactly like losing my dog crying, So I think we think crying is a negative thing, but it's really just us, our souls emoting and feeling. So there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, I cry all the time when I'm, giving a speech, if I'm talking about like my children in Africa, how much I love them, how much I love the work that I do. When I talk about how much I love my daughter, I will get emotional, but it's not because I'm coming from a sad place. So I think crying is just us feeling deeply.
Well, and tears are emotions that words cannot depict. And I think too, Dawn, we've had this conversation a little bit about how we're able to show or shed tears in one sense, right? When it's expected, such as after receiving some type of award, when you come through the trenches, is known as the adversity of life, versus when you're in a state of grief and the love for this person or pets or job. When you're crying, we apologize. I'm sorry, I'm crying. It's like we've got to work towards no longer apologizing for showing emotion. And when you've already said it, that, it holds the same amount of reverence and, commonality. And I know I had to work through that. I will say, Dawn, that this grief journey has taught me so much about life, about myself, about letting go of ideologies, principles, and expectations that I placed on myself, obviously, kind of as a defense mechanism at certain points in my journey to get to where I am today. But also, it's taught me that life is too short to not be happy. And I know that my mother would not want me to be laying up in the bed all day, not living out my purpose. And I think for our listeners who are tuning in, whether it's that loss, a physical transition or loss of a person or a job, Dawn, with you and the fur babies and your dad, I think we have to remind ourselves of what would this person want. They wouldn't want us to be idle every single day. Yeah, give yourself time for self-care, give yourself time to breathe, but continue to live. I think too many people become afraid once someone transitions. So literally, they've kind of nailed themselves to their own cross when grief settles in. And I think we've got to learn to pivot from that mindset and really embark into an arena of living life to the fullest. And what does that truly mean? What does that truly look like? And I know for me, it took some time to be able to see things from this lens of opportunity. But once I got here, Dawn, I can say that it has truly propelled me and kept me afloat from falling into so many different toxic behaviors. And I can say that I'm grateful because I made a choice. I made a conscious choice. And I put my intention towards wellness instead of stagnation. And so, Dawn, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to add on to that, Portia. Through life's greatest challenges, we learn our greatest lessons. That doesn't mean they don't hurt our soul. It doesn't mean that they're not painful, but we do learn our greatest lessons through our greatest adversities.
Oh, 100%. I think, I'm an audiobook junkie, hence why my book is audio first and print coming soon. One of the books that I listened to was Jessica Simpson's book, Open Book. And the very end of her book, she said, it is through pain where we find our greatest strength. I would have never believed that my mom transitioning would be what I call the catapult of strength, the catapult of pushing me forward into my path, my divine path that I'm currently on. And I'm forever grateful that this segue, even though it was rocky in the beginning, has propelled me to become the person who I wanted to be, the person who, God wants me to be, and also to live life to the fullest. Again, I think, we got to look for the opportunity within the adverse situation. But moving right along from that, Dawn, I got to ask this, obviously you love our fur kids, and, obviously you're very passionate about what you do. And so how do you, Dawn, find that balance between your passion for helping and giving yourself unconditionally to everybody else and also maintaining your own mental well-being?
That's what drives me. It's what compels me, knowing that I can be of service to somebody else, that I could be that person that somebody could go to know that maybe something I did or something I said changed somebody's life for the better, whether I met them in person or if it's just something they know about me that they've seen or heard. That is my passion. That's what I'm here for. And so that gives back to me. It's like it's the self-charging thing. The more I do it, the more I get from it.
See, this is why we are so much alike, because it's the same with me, my love and passion for storytelling. Hence why I could probably do a marathon of podcasts for a whole week. And yeah, I'll be dead dog tired, but I love what I do. I love listening to people's stories and hearing how they went from being, kind of a J.K. Rowling, homeless in a box, writing your book on napkins, to now you're, a very successful author or coach, whatever. I love hearing those stories because we never know how our blueprint of overcoming whatever that challenge was is somebody else's lifeline to stop the cemetery from becoming wealthier. So we're going to take another quick break right here on Good Portia. Everybody stick with us. We will be right back. All right, everybody, welcome back right here on Group Portia. Well, Dawn, thank you so much for joining me on, again, this special day of launch for me. And, and it's always just an honor to share this space with you and to really, show the world that we truly are more connected than what we believe. And we also mimic and seek greater. This is what we'll get. So, Dawn, for our listeners who are tuning in, and I could not wait to talk about this, you are working on an upcoming project that I, shameless plug, believe will really change the way people see grief, adversity, and opportunities. So please, Dawn, share with our listeners about your upcoming book project.
Well, thank you for having me, first of all. I always love sharing space with you. And this is what our phone conversations are like all the time. They're always deep. They're always profound. They're always uplifting. And I always come away feeling inspired. My upcoming book project, I'm so thrilled about this project. I thought about this many years ago, and it is finally here. It took, I believe in divine time. So everything in its time. So this book is going to be launched November 11th. It is called Believe. It is a collection of faith, hope, and love. And it is, we've got authors from Africa, we've got authors from all over the United States who are contributing stories of a moment in their life or something that happened in their life that changed the way they believed, that something happened that they couldn't question, that there is something beyond, something, some higher power, whether you call it creator or source or God or Allah or whatever you call it. There is some greater power that is beyond us. And I wanted to share those stories because, like you had mentioned earlier, these things hadn't happened to you before, so you didn't know whether to believe or not to believe. But when it does happen to you, you're like, oh, wow. Okay, this is that. And so I want to share those stories for the skeptics, because I was a skeptic for a long time. And I want to bring people to know that there is something more than just what we see in this physical existence, and to have that faith and to believe, because your life will be changed for it in the most profound ways.
And Dawn, thank you for sharing that, because you're right. There's so many miracles within our everyday that science cannot explain, man cannot explain. I mean, I think I've shared this story with you before about, when I left one of my corporate jobs. I was sitting in church, during a time when obviously someone else was going through a hardship. And I'm trying to pay attention to obviously the events. I mean, for our listeners who are tuning in, one of my close friends had, lost someone. So I went to the funeral service to support them. And while I was sitting in the church, I couldn't pay attention to the service. My mind was thinking about, oh my God, I hate my job. Like, I'm ready to go, but I don't know if it's the right time. I need a sign. Well, while I'm sitting in church, I hear God's voice say, Portia, you're done. And I'm looking around, and there's only one person sitting next to me on my right, and I didn't see their mouth move. So I'm like, okay, what's going on here? I said, no, I didn't hear that. I didn't hear that. That's just a figment of my imagination, right? But then a few seconds go by and I heard it again. Portia, you're done. You will not go back to work on Monday. And trust me, Dawn, I wrestled with that for a minute. I was like, okay, I'm not going to go back to work Monday, but what am I going to do from there? I just took the leap. I said, you know what? If this is my sign from God, I'm just going to follow it to the T and just go from there. He's going to be my parachute and my safety net through this transition. And sure enough, Dawn, it worked out. I didn't go back to work that Monday. I took the full week to myself to decompress. I didn't have headaches anymore. I didn't have stomach aches from anxiety and all of the things. And the very next week, I had a better position with work-life balance, and life was grand. But I wouldn't have taken that leap if I didn't get that sign, and the fact that I was open to it. Because who's to say that if I didn't take heed of that notice, where I'd be today? I could be in the hospital, on a ventilator because I let my health go or whatever. So I'm grateful that I listened. And how many of us, Dawn, are given those signs, but yet we kind of need a more concrete approach, to say the least?
Well, many people would have said, but what about this and what about that, and wouldn't have listened to that voice, but you did. And that's faith. That is taking a leap of faith.
And Dawn, for our listeners who are tuning in, if they're interested in when the book comes out, where they can learn more, or, if there's going to be other volumes and they potentially want to be a contributor, is there a website or any way that they can, inquire?
But the best thing I would say at this point is to reach out to me on one of my websites or find me on LinkedIn or Facebook. And I will be sharing that more as we start to develop the future volumes, working on this first edition, getting it like perfect so that we can do this in multiple editions. So we would love to have more people from around the world join us with these stories to help people, find their own faith and find a path to something beyond them.
And to see the miracles in life, like through that dark time, I mean, I was, Dawn, and I shared this with you before. At that time, I had a very high paying position. I mean, I was making at least 70, 80,000 a year, but I wasn't happy. My soul was tired. I mean, it just, there was that contradiction of, okay, yeah, I'm making all this money, but how am I really enjoying the money that I'm making when every time I come home or take PTO, I'm sick in the bed? So, where really is the fulfillment? Where really is the purpose here? If I'm making all this money just to sleep all day, wrong answer. We got to find a new mathematical equation to solve this problem. And
And
so
it's good
I'm,
that you valued your happiness and your peace over just money, because money is a currency. It's not our highest currency. So it's not good or bad. It's just a thing. But if we value it as our highest thing, then we're going to miss out on the highest things, which is like love and happiness and peace. All of those things I value way higher than just actual dollars.
I agree, Dawn. And, that's why I was grateful that I took that leap when I did, because the return, I mean, literally that same time when you talk about the reward and the currency, 3 months later, after I walked away from that position, Grew with Portia started 3 months later. And who's to say that Grew with Portia wouldn't have still been born through that? But I think that the road would have been a little rockier, because trying to find that balance of being able to find time to record, scheduling guests after work or in between time and all the things. But it worked out, like you said, in divine timing. And the fact that I took the leap, I listened and I took it and ran with it. I just said, you know what? It's just going to work out. I'll just close the door and keep going. And here we are today. Dawn, as always, I mean, these conversations with you are always so inspiring and enlightening. And, I think, in the world that we live in today, we've got to really put inspiration, motivation, and positivity as the forefront of our everyday. It could be a simple social media post, it can be a starting your day with gratitude, but I think we really need to heavily emphasize that in the world that we live in today, where when there is so much negativity that tends to blind us from the great things that occur in our life. The fact that we get to wake up every day, so many of us take that for granted, but I don't. And that's what I can say with this grief journey that I've been on. It has taught me to live each moment by moment and really indulge in every moment that I'm given, because I don't know what my timeline is, but I know that I want my timeline to be full of great experiences and to have no regret on the leaps of faith that I took to really embark on my purpose journey. So, Dawn, for our listeners who are tuning in, I mean, you've left us with so much food for thought, words of wisdom, a way to believe, a way to shift our mindset from a place of adversity to opportunity. Dawn, what words of inspiration can you leave with our listeners today? Whether it's someone who is currently on a grief journey and they're trying to find their footing in a stable foundation of faith, or if it's someone who just wants to be the change they wish to see in the world where they currently are. What words of inspiration can you leave with our listeners today?
I always love to tell people, show up as the person you wished you had in your life, whether it's the cashier at the grocery store or the person at the post office or somebody in traffic. Just be that kind person, smile, say hello, genuinely like care about other people. That is how we can all change the world. If we all just did that to the person next to us, the world would be a much different place.
Ooh, Dawn, you said one of my favorite things, kindness. I always say to be the exception. Be the exception as the extra mile is never crowded. The extra mile is always plentiful. And to always remember that each and every one of us is going through something, whether it's grief, whether it's a sick parent, whether it's a kid that's having trouble in school, whether it's a pet issue, or you're transitioning to a new endeavor in your life. There's rocky moments. But within those rocky moments, there is that level of light. There's that level of gratitude that through this journey that you're on, no matter what, whether it lasts for a lifetime or whether it lasts for 3 months, give yourself a pat on the back for giving it your all. Have no regrets on embarking on whatever journey you do, because you'll never know what you'll get until you take that leap of faith. Well, everybody, that was Miss Dawn Earhart Whitty, my coach and soul mother, that you heard from. And that concludes another episode of Grew with Portia, everybody. Thanks for listening, and have a great and awesome evening, everybody.